What's up?
Oh man, I was nervous for a second because the last couple of weeks, Karina, we've had issues with
Yeah.
IG Live, uh,
Yes.
but
Okay.
but I'm excited that you're on today. Have you met Mike before?
No, I not in person. Have we?
Yeah.
We meet a lot of
Nice to
people.
meet you digitally.
Digitally,
This is
yes.
the next step in between person and text.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, Karina, thank you for joining. Obviously, as you know, Mike and I, we run Torii together. Story Time is our weekly IG Live. Excited to have you on today to kind of talk about your journey and the developer ecosystem that you've obviously worked with for quite some time now. But before we kind of get into some questions, tell us a little bit about your journey. Obviously, you work with a lot of developers now, but I'm guessing it didn't start off that way. So, like, what's your journey been like, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, of course. Can you guys hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Terrific.
Cool. So I feel, and I've said this before, I feel like my journey with developers started primarily with my brokerage, Evo Real Estate Group. When I was a new agent, I got introduced to developers that I don't think I would have had the opportunity to meet so early on. And basically, it was because they had this structure where they would bring in developers through their sphere, and then they would allow agents in the office to pitch that developer, and then that developer would choose who to work with. But so very early on, I'm talking about like as soon as I went full time, I was what 22, and I
Wow.
had the opportunity to work with some developers. And then I executed really well on those projects. I worked on building up my branding since then. And slowly but surely, I kept doing it over and over again. And now I clearly have like a brand that resonates with developers.
And how long have you been doing this?
5 years full time.
So this is kind of something Mike and I have talked about a lot. Like,
Right on.
this doesn't happen overnight, people. If you're an agent that's listening right now, like Karina as an example, Mike and I have been doing this for a little bit. This takes time. So whatever your niche is, whatever you're going to be you're trying to build for your business, it's going to take time. And Karina, obviously, great example of that within the developer community. Mike, I'm sure you have some questions for Karina. Why don't you get
Oh,
started?
was I supposed to bring some? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. All right, all right, Karina. So when you are, I guess, getting with the developer from like the initial concept of what they're going to put there, if it's going to be multiple units, what the design is, what is kind of in vogue or desirable at the time in terms of product. How involved are you? How do those conversations take place? And if a building is going to be finished a year and a half later, like how price things out and allow for maybe a little bit of leeway if the market shifts or if tastes
Yep.
shift.
That's a great question. So I think, I get brought on at different stages depending on where that developer is at. I personally like to be involved since the very beginning, before your like framing changes are defined, because obviously, the person that's going to be able to net you the highest amount should be involved in the decisions that dictate how much you're going to get, if that makes sense. And so, sometimes if I come in at the end of the project, certain decisions that significantly affect price have already been made, and
Mm,
I can't influence that, and that is going to have an influence on the total
mm.
sellout. So
Can
ideally,
you
I'm go ahead.
can you give an example of something like that? To like,
So, and
yeah,
it's,
specify.
yeah, 100%. It depends on it's market specific, and it comes down to understanding what that marketplace is looking for in that price point. And I think the people who have the best understanding of that are the agents. And of course, if you're a developer who like only works in this one area and this one price point, yeah, you should have an
Mhm.
understanding of that as well. But if you're not, you might miss a thing or two. I don't know. It kind of depends on each market, but and the price points. But missing basic things that seem small but end up being big. So, for example, having stackable washer dryers versus a laundry room in like $1 million price points, like $2, $3, $4 million price points, like little things like this. Having just
Hmm.
certain decisions like that would impact price when things don't feel intentional, or like when things feel like it's an afterthought.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah,
So you're
like
saying
adding a half bath here or something like that. Like this stuff. Like, yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, washer dryer in the basement versus in the bedroom level.
yeah, yeah.
Over like not thinking through the how the space is being utilized, right? So you can have 2,500 square feet, but if that space is allocated in a way that feels unfunctional, then it
Mm.
doesn't serve its purpose. Like if we have oversized bedrooms where in reality, okay, it could have been a third of two-thirds of that size, and we could have gained in the living area, where it would have been more impactful. Just little decisions like that. Um, and I love being involved since the framing process because I can help make those decisions. I like going on site and actually feeling the space and saying, okay, actually on paper this felt this way, but in person we should make these changes based on this. Um,
Terrific.
I and I also, when I'm involved since the beginning, that gives me, I mean, 12 months or so, whatever that project is going to take of marketing time, right? So it takes weeks to get the renderings back, as you guys know. It takes weeks to put the website together. I mean, relatively to get all the marketing together, website, floor plans, renderings, pricing, kind of all of it. It just takes a little bit, and so it gives me the time to put it out there. I do believe in selling pre-construction, and I think that the question around how do you account for market adjustments? I think that it depends on how you're marketing. We're not going to go, let's say it's an 8 unit building. We're not going to go and list the 8 units on the MLS, right? We'll be
Mm.
strategic as to which
Yeah,
units we're putting on there. But then we might have a secondary means of marketing for people to see the full project. So it might be a website or something that I've liked to use in the past is Zillow New Construction, Zillow's Builders New Construction site. You pay like $50 a month now. It used to work differently before, but now you can pay $50 a month to show up on a Zillow Builders website kind of page. And what you can do is Zillow will charge you now per lead a ridiculous amount. So instead of saying I want to get the leads through Zillow, what I'll do is I'll put the project on Zillow, but I'll have my website linked. So a buyer the project gets exposed on Zillow to the marketplace. But if they want to learn more, then they're going to click on that website, and then I'm going to get the lead directly. And so I kind of go
nice.
bypass that whole $300 per lead thing.
Hopefully
Yeah,
Zillow's not
Zillow isn't
listening.
listening. We won't. Yeah.
But apart from that, one of the things that's important to highlight about having pricing off the MLS is how it allows you to remain dynamic. So yes, sometimes we might have to go to lower the price, but there have also been times where we can increase the price because we are in a position where, hey, maybe we're 75% sold out. We feel very confident with where we're at, and we can push those other units because now we're not held by our holding costs, right? Or maybe X amount of units, pay off the loan once we get to CO, and then we can be more aggressive with those price points. I've done that on multiple occasions where we actually increase the price point on the website, and so I like it. You just kind of adjust based on what the market is doing,
Right.
especially when a project takes 12 to 18 months.
I have a
Yeah.
question on you mentioned framing, you mentioned being involved at that stage. Like, how receptive are developers to like and I'm sure it varies, right? But like how receptive are they to like the changes you might want to make to their plans? Like, are they generally receptive? I know now you built some clout, right? Like, and developers, like, especially the ones that you've worked with a few times, maybe, or have a certain level of respect for you and all that kind of stuff. So they'll take your suggestions a bit more seriously. But generally, like, are they open to those changes, or do they fight you up?
That's a great question. It depends on who you're working with, as always. And I think especially, it also depends on what stage of the project we're in, right? So if I go in and I see that MEPs are in, and I want to make a framing change, I know that the developer, it's going to be harder for me because it's going to cost him more money
Yeah.
to have to go back, make that change, get the electrician back out, get the plumber back out. it's less likely that change is going to happen. But if we are still, which is why I like to be involved since the very beginning. But if I'm telling you, hey, I think we should make these changes because I think it will significantly impact price, a lot of times they will, unless I'm in a new market or it's a new price point, or it's, it's kind of at the edge of what I
Right.
haven't done too much yet. And even though I know that I'm giving them sound advice based on the data, they might think, well, I'm more experienced in this area than you, or I've sold many of these before like this, so I'm fine. And that's always a little frustrating. I've worked with developers where they're literally like, here's the description, here's the price, and here's the way I want the photos listed on the MLS. And I'm literally like, okay, well, what
Not
did you hire
here.
me for? Just because I'm definitely not
Yeah.
here just to open the door. I'm here for strategy. I'm here to advise you. It's because my opinion does hold value. And I think that I've definitely learned my lesson, and I think my intention is to work in the future with people who understand the value that I bring, and see me as a partner and care about my opinion. Yeah.
Love that. That's awesome. I mean, we got a bunch of people who've joined. We're talking to Karina about her experience working with developers.
Party in
Um,
here.
she's yeah, she's sharing a lot of great insight in terms of how she works with them. So if you're an agent, especially, definitely listen to kind of some of the things that she has to say in terms of her journey, in terms of the ups and downs. So let's get to that. So you shared some of the ups and downs. What are some of the common misconceptions you feel that like people have when it comes to working with the developer? And I mean that both from the perspective of an agent as well as of like a buyer, right? A buyer that's working directly with the developer.
Yep. So I sometimes wonder, all the time, I wonder why the fuck I work with new construction when I'm like, my sales cycle is now 12 to 18 months versus a 30 to 45 days where you're in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And all the amount of resources and planning and time that goes into it while you have this project under construction. I mean, I think that that's one of the considerations to have when you're going into new construction is the amount of funds that you're fronting, rendering, signage, I mean, marketing upfront that you might not see until a year later. And I've had times where I've started to market properties only for something to happen with that developer and their financing. And all of a sudden the deal's not happening and I don't have a listing. And so those are kind of the things that are downfalls, right, of working in
Yeah.
new construction. I think that it's also very difficult to sell pre-construction with a developer that isn't organized or communicates properly.
Oh
Be-
yeah. Oh
yeah, like
yeah.
you want me to sell this pre-construction, but there are certain things that I need, and I'm now at a point where I know exactly what I need, and like this is the moment we meet, I'm like, hey, I need all these things, and
Yeah.
then weeks go by and months go by, and I don't have the actual specs or this and that. And at the end of the day, you guys, if you're a buyer, you want to know what this is going to look like. You want to know exactly what tile is going there. You want to know the appliance package. I mean, you want to know those details because that's what I'm going to be able to use to sell you on the vision. Without that, there is no vision. And without a vision, there is no buyer to close.
Right. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Could you
Go ahead, Mike.
dive in a little? That's a curiosity of mine. Of like, even if the building's done, when there's no furniture, no anything like that, people have limited imaginations as to what that actual space feels like and is useful for. But yet, before even it's completed, so stop even imagine what the room is. So, what are your techniques of getting that vision in somebody's brain so that they can see it without it being physically
Yeah.
completed?
And this, I think this question ties well to your previous question, actually, because I think what sometimes agents don't realize is how knowledgeable and educated you need to be when you're selling pre-construction, not only in
Hmm.
regards to, hey, what's going in at the end, but all of the construction related questions, because that's how, especially when you don't have a finished product, you need to have the answers. You need to know everything up front. You can't have a buyer come through and say like, oh, what are we doing for water prevent, or like what is the developer doing for water prevention? And then you're like, oh, let me get back to you. I mean, that you've already, you need to be so confident in what you're selling that you relay
Hmm.
that confidence into the buyer. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is with preparation. And preparation means having the knowledge up front. And so this comes back to the developers. I mean, when I first meet with them, I'm like, there's kind of two things. I want the specs, and if you're working with a designer, I always love that because they make my life so much easier. But if they're not, it's like, okay, I want the specs of what everything's going to look like at the end. But then I also want, what did we do for installation? What did we do? Like, where, like, give me your installation invoice. Don't worry, I'm not going to share it. Don't worry, but I'm going to take that invoice and I'm going to say, okay, they use closed cell here, they use open cell here, and if you don't even know what those, like, okay, let me take a step back. Let's say
Yeah,
it's
bring
closed.
it.
Let's say it's
Go.
closed cell. Let's say it's open cell. If I just say that to a buyer, maybe it's pointless. But do you know how to take that fact from the construction and relay it to the buyer so that they understand why it matters? For example, closeout insulation. Oh, it'll help with noise insulation in this area, and so that's what specifically why we did it. Or resilient channels. Even if I always tell developers this, I'm like, even if you have to do it per code, because I obviously work in different markets, so there's going to be, code will vary, and I'm like, even if you have to do things per code, but if it helps me point to the quality of the construction, tell me. So for example, something in Somerville and probably in a lot of other places, but you have to use resilient channels in between before hanging the drywall, and that helps with noise vibration. And so I'm walking through a site, you can see that. If you're at a point in the construction where you can see it, I can point out to the buyer and say, hey, this is going to help reduce the level of noise between the units, whatever. So all of those details, right? The windows, is there anything that I can say about Marvin windows versus Anderson windows, whatever. I'll literally go on their websites and take their selling points, and I'll use that, and I'll be like, yeah, well, here we're using this, which is actually better. Yeah, which is actually better than over there because of X, Y, and Z. Or like, just small things where it's like, especially if you're in a market where your quality is better than the rest. Buyers don't know that. Buyers don't see that. They can't really tell the difference between a Home Depot cabinet and a custom cabinet. And
Correct.
being
Yeah.
able to speak to the quality of those things because you actually know it, is going to help paint that picture of quality. So that's all, like, the just like understanding construction specs, right? But then also, of course, to paint that vision, it's using the finishing specs to create renderings. And as I'm going through the showing, I'm showing them we're looking at the room, and I'm showing them what the room will look like as a finished product. They need to visually be able to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing the whole showing like that. And I'm building trust regarding the developer, right? Because we need to, like, mitigate the risk that the buyers feel during that showing, which is, do I trust this? It's not finished.
Yeah.
Who's a developer? Is he a good builder? So you're just like, you're the only person that buyer is relying on for the information, and you need to, like, have the whole thing together.
Yeah, I think basically everything you just said speaks to just being an extension of the developer. Like, the ins and outs. You can, while being a good salesperson, right? Like, you can talk to all these details, answer these questions, all that kind of stuff. Be available. You talked about the details on installation, things like that. Like you said, preparation. That's critical, right? And that's key, I think, with any client that you're working with, whether it's a buyer, a seller, investor, what have you. But I think on the developer front, it's a different level, and I think it's super helpful insight to have that. We got a bunch of other people joining too. You guys have any questions for Karina? Karina's talking to us about working with the developer ecosystem, and kind of like the mindset that she needs to have as an agent that works with a lot of developers. So if you guys have questions, please drop them. We'll try to get
Yeah.
them in there in the next 8 minutes or so. Karina, um, when it comes to buyers, like, what are there any, like, tips that you would give them if they're looking at like any of these, like, pre-construction or new construction type of the builds that you work with? Is there any tips that they should keep in mind in the back of their mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is expectations around timelines. Like, we see this over and over again, where we set a certain deadline, and then it ends up being well past that. And then if they're not prepared adequately for that, if there was rate lock extensions locked in before the appropriate time, then we're dealing with those discussions. More importantly for me, I really care about someone's livelihood, right? Like if like we cannot be telling somebody it's going to be done 9/1 and then that buyer's lease is up 8/31 and oh it's all going to work out magically. No, I mean I so that's one of the things I lead with when it comes to buying new construction. It's basically this: like if you can't afford to for there to be delays and to have housing, then it might not be for you. So
Yeah.
that's really important for me. It's just like the stress that comes from not being, from not having your
Yeah.
house situated. But apart from that is also who's the developer? Because all new construction is, and all renovations are, and all builders are not made equal. And that's something I've certainly learned. And what are their previous projects? Is there something that, it obviously varies if I'm just representing the buyer versus I'm the listing agent, but if I'm representing a buyer, I'm like, well, who's this developer? Do they have previous projects that we can look at? Is there any due diligence that we could do? Because I mean, I've seen, other agents do this, and anybody can do this, which is, hey, I'm buying from this new builder. This is their portfolio. I mean, can we find anybody who was on the buy side of those previous transactions? How did they handle punch lists? I mean, this is where I start to get, I'm now at a point in my career where I am really concerned about moving forward, working with developers that stand by their work, that
Mm.
treat their line of work in the same way that I treat my line of work. The client experience, because what I've learned is that my reputation will be tainted by the developers that I work with, and I will be seen as a partner because I'm the one selling those things, right? And so, hey, did they finish the punch list, or did they just ghost you and never show up? These are the types of things that I do think buyers should be wary of. I think what else? Making sure that you have punch list, obviously language in there in your offers. And I think right now, specifically, buyers probably have some chance of getting considerable concessions from builders specifically. Less from maybe a one-off seller, but if you're a builder with a 10-unit build here, an 8-unit build here, and another 5-unit build there, like you definitely are incentivized to move units. So I
For
think
sure.
also advising them to try and secure deals from builders, I suppose, on the buy
Got it.
side. On the list side, forget about it.
I think, yeah. I mean, there's some great points, and hopefully there's some buyers that are on the live right now or that see the recording afterwards that get some great tips out of that. I think like one of the things I really respect out of like some of the things you post to your stories. You mentioned it earlier. Like you're like the like so a lot of people and Mike kind of alluded to it too. You go into a new construction, you see a room. Most people like yeah, we go through new construction builds fairly regularly, so we can oftentimes tell closet's going to go here, powder room's going to go there. Like here's where the living room's going to be, this is the kitchen, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people can't. So I like that when you go on your stories, you'll be walking through a new construction, and then you'll put the rendering like oftentimes as part of that story. So I think like if you're an agent that has an opportunity to work with developers, that is super helpful, super invaluable. It takes the guessing work out of it. So
I want to add actually, if you are on the buy side of a new development deal, it's really important that you work with an agent that understands new construction, because they're going to be able to see things from a certain lens that agents who are not very experienced with those deals are. And especially as relates to the contracts as well, because like things that I can just think of the top of my head. If I have a buyer, I'm going to make sure that that punch list language is very precise in hopefully a way that is favorable to the buyer if I'm representing the buyer, or I'm at least making sure that the attorney is keeping that in mind. I'm making sure that the language is tight around deadlines and extensions regarding COs and things of that nature. Again, on the buy side, and I'm being very particular. If the project is not finished, you need to be very detailed about how that spec sheet is called out, because if it's not in the spec sheet, you have no power over it in reality. So just making sure that those details are ironed out on the buy side for sure.
got it.
Yeah. I I think like if on your end, Karina, if you're on the seller's end, understting that buyer's agent too, because we've had situations where you're right that person doesn't really understand new construction, we've all made our share of mistakes at the beginning of like assuming some things can happen. It does need to be super tight and specific because there will be buyers that are like on a whim asking you to change this or expecting one thing, and then like that becomes a pressure issue, and because it's delayed, you just are with this sort of tension for
Yeah.
weeks and months
Oh,
leading
awful.
up to the closing, and we all want to make sure that everyone's happy at the end. So the tightness of the expectations, and that's something that Assad and I will always tell our buyers is like if they're saying September 1st, expect end of October,
Yeah.
like as
Yeah. Yeah.
or just
I've had a
depending on where they're at.
I've had a 2 year delay before on three units in the same building. There were it was a 2 year delay. That was and two of them were 1031 exchanges, so that was tough.
And
But
then we're like going all, and then I'm doing my job all over again. Oh my gosh.
yeah, right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Well, Karina, we want to be respectful of your time. This was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this intel with us.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have you on again to kind of review some things. But really quick, I want to ask you one thing too. Obviously, you're busy. You're working. It sounds like you're working with both buyers and sellers, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm
Yeah.
primarily listing heavy right now, but yes, I mean I've done a lot with
Okay.
buyers premier in the beginning.
So you're busy. There's probably a lot of agents who are listening in on this and what have you. How do you manage your time?
I'm still learning
Yeah,
that.
Mike, did I say it? That she's probably going to say that.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
no, I'll
Called
be
it.
honest. I'm still
We
navigating what that is. I'm
so
really
are we.
focused right now on trying to build systems because I do feel disorganized. I do have a lot going on. And I think the only way that I'm going to be able to scale and do the type of business that I envision myself doing is by having a very systemized business. And that's what I'm actively working on right now.
Yeah, and then while making sure you're taking care of yourself too, right? I mean,
Yes. While getting some
it's
sun on my skin, going on
yeah,
walks.
right.
I have learned to prioritize myself, which I think, like when I was brand new into the business, I did not have that. Everything was urgent. Everything, I have to take this call here, I have to do that,
Yeah,
and it was hurting my personal relationships and my own self well-being. And I'm at a point where it's like, no, me first, and then the business comes after.
love that. Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Karina. This was
Great.
awesome.
Yeah.
It was
Keep
great.
doing
Thank you
what you're
guys so
Real quick,
much.
doing. It,
did
go
I
ahead,
read
Mike.
it? Are you BC person?
Yeah. I graduated from. Did you go to BC?
Same.
Oh no way!
Yeah, right on.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that.
I felt the warmth here.
I love it. I love it.
Get,
This was
get
awesome.
rid of
Thank you
those
guys.
jumbos. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll check in on you again, and hopefully
Yeah.
we're able to do some deals together. I mean, it's a matter
Let's
of
do
time.
it. Yes,
Yeah.
let's do
Right.
it.
I've shown several of your listings. Unfortunately, nothing's come together yet, but we'll figure it out.
We'll manifest it before
Yeah.
the end of the year.
All right. Sounds good. All right.
All
Thank you,
right.
Karina. Thank you, guys. This
Thank
is
you
Story Time.
guys.
Join us next week. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank